welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, India's only daily television platform for small businesses. We bring you the right information to empower you, the SME entrepreneur. Tonight on this very special conversation, BSE presents SME Success Stories. I'm in conversation with the MD and CEO of BSE, Ashish Chauhan, talking about what small businesses which are looking to list should keep in mind, why you should look at listing, and also what you should do as you prepare for your listing journey. It's very exciting to have you on the show today, as you are the person when it comes to talking funding and why businesses should look at listing on exchanges, particularly the BSE. So thank you for your time here on the show. My first question to you is, and let's start with some numbers. 299, I understand, are the companies which are on the BSE SME platform, of which about 61 have transitioned to the main board. So the big question is, if you can, through this interview, talk to our SMEs, the top 2 or 3 reasons why they should look at listing.
Basically, any entrepreneur, when he or she starts business, they have to worry about growth. Mm-hmm. If you stay there at the same place, pretty much you will go down. So you need to continue to grow. And as you rightly said, for growth, what you require is funding. Mm. Funding can come from various sources for an entrepreneur. The biggest part of the funding in small businesses is from actually entrepreneurs' own resources. Sure. The second part is from the business profits that you plow into the company. But when you go to the banks ask you for debt equity ratio, which means if you want to take a loan of say 1 crore rupees and debt equity ratio is 1:1, then you need to have 1 crore rupees of equity capital, which you may not have. And where will you go for getting equity from? So you may go to your friends, you may go to your relatives, and they may not be willing to give you even if they have money. Similarly, nowadays, many people think they may be able to go to venture capitalists or angel investors, and it's not necessary that they will also give you money. You can always take a look at going through the exchange mechanism, sure. Even if you are very small, because we have this perception in our mind that only large companies are listed on exchanges. But the BSE SME platform, which started in 2012 March, it's 7 years old now. And as you said, it's close to 300 companies that has been listed. They've raised 3,100 crore rupees from the markets, and then market capitalization is close to 20,000 crore. So effectively, these small little companies have come to the market, raised funds. They have used this fund for their expansion, for even taking over other companies, and many other situations. So for me, an entrepreneur, of course, funding is important. But more than that, what is important is to create wealth. Okay. You create your business and you are running it day to day. What you get at the end of the year is your profit. Mm-hmm. But profit may not come next year or next to next year, or you fall ill. There are many issues with SME businesses, and that's where if you have listed your company, it gives you a wealth. For example, if you are running a business and it's making, say, 2 crore profit in a year. You are somewhere so businessman. You are not very great businessman. But if you list your company on BSE SME, then that company which is making 2 crore profit in a year might be valued at, say, 20 crore rupees. Okay. If you are going on your car and somebody says his profit is 2 crore rupees, people may not give you that much importance. But when you say 20 crore rupees net worth, or valuation your company has, so suddenly people get up. Similarly, when you list a company, there is a minimum discipline that is expected from you. Sure. And because of that, when you go and give your card to a bank manager, to his secretary, and secretary takes it to the bank manager, there is a possibility that you might have to wait. But if you put on your card,
have a little tagline that says listed on the
BSE, suddenly people perceive you, sure, as much more compliant, much more disciplined.
I just want to pick up on that, and you're saying discipline. what discipline should an SME, which has just, even if they've just launched, even if they've just started their business, look to put in place from day one? Because the criticism we hear often from banks, for instance, that speak to us are saying that the books of SMEs are not transparent. So even if you're not looking at listing right now, but a couple of years down the line, what is the discipline they need to do?
See, basically, the SME perception earlier was very different in non-GST area. People used to run different books, they were not transparent. Today, with GST being the only norm in India and a single tax, people are willing to pay up those taxes. And that's where, for me, post-GST, most SMEs would have a much cleaner books. And of course, they would have been tax compliant, because the biggest reason why a company would list itself is that they would be fully compliant on all aspects, from the GST perspective, but also from income tax and all their revenues and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Will all be fully compliant. Of course, today, even if you're a limited company and not listed, you will still be reporting to MCA every year in XBRL format, your reports, annual reports and other things. So most of the compliance orientation which was required for a listed company is now come slowly into the SMEs anyway, because if you have a company, you need to comply with MCA regulations, including many regulations where you need to continue to upgrade information about your company into the MCA portal. And similarly, from the tax perspective, now everyone seems to be paying up the production taxes or services taxes, which is called GST, and also the income tax, which is the income tax. And that's where, for me, overall, most of the compliance that were required and which were separating companies which are willing to list or which can list vis-a-vis what companies which cannot list are now slowly, all of them are coming towards a listing enabled framework. And that's why it will be easier for most of them to list in the current scenario vis-a-vis, say, 5 years back or 10 years back.
Sure, fair enough. I just want to go back to my previous question and talk about, how many companies you, for instance, at BSE are seeing have transitioned to the main board. Are you those seeing interest from maybe specific industries or verticals? Would you like to see it more broad-based? What sort of maybe trends going into the second half of 2019 are you seeing?
See, basically, we think that overall India will grow in more high-tech oriented activities. But last, say, 7 years, we have seen 300 companies, and they are in varied areas, from trading to metal manufacturing to even interesting area like logistics, like even biomass. Even some of the clinics have listed themselves. So eventually, the way we look at it is no industry sector is accounting for, say, more than 12-13% of the listed companies in the SME sector, which is much more representative of the Indian sort of listed framework vis-a-vis the large companies, where they tend to focus on what is in, so pharmaceutical companies or IT companies are, or even banking system, they are the three large frameworks. Whereas in the SME sector, we have seen a much more broader base, much more interesting companies, which we wouldn't think that those companies would be able to list and now are listing. Even robotics companies have listed on BSE's SME platform.
Okay. Could you maybe break that data for us further down and talk about perhaps what sort of interest and action you are seeing from non-metro based companies? Because we're talking to SMEs, I would presume a large part of these companies are coming from outside of your hubs of, say, Bengaluru, Delhi, etc. Are you happy with what you're seeing?
Yeah, we have basically companies coming, in some ways, some of the metro companies are there. But we have companies coming from, say, Gurgaon. Now you can call it Delhi. But there is a logistics company which is from Gurgaon. And we have companies coming from Surat, from Ahmedabad, from Aurangabad, from Salem, and from various parts of India, including Bihar. We have a company listed from Bihar, which is actually into the retailing. And so we have varied companies from different parts of India, and that is what is basically so much more exciting about the SME platform, that it truly represents the upcoming India, the sort of new India, which is now sort of raring to come up and go.
Okay, this is a two-part question, and the second part of this question about companies which are based outside of the metros is to talk about the fact that companies that we meet here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, which are based in places like say Ranchi, for instance, tell us we don't have access to good mentors, whereas by immediately listing on the BSE, for instance, they get access to good mentors, to people who are hand-holding them. So, do you think that's crucial as well?
Basically, for me, anyone requires mentors, and they also require role models. So if you see a kind of a bureaucrat or an officer talking about business, it is one thing, you understand that that's his job. But when you see a friend of yours or somebody who is similar position as yours, looks at it and says, no, I have come up by listing, it was easy or it was difficult this way, you need to look into this aspect, that aspect, people actually connect to it more. So what we tend to do is to take, of course, people who can handhold you, the investment bankers, the auditors, and those people also when we do a roadshow. We have done over last 7 years close to 1,500 to 2,000 roadshows along with various chambers of commerce, television channels and others. But effectively what we have seen is looking at somebody who has been from their type, we have people from Rajkot, probably 7-8 companies from Rajkot has come one after another because they have seen one person took a plunge and then sort of everyone else learns from them. For me, it's a more a movement which takes some time for it to roll out and to gather the momentum, but it's happening across India. We are seeing companies coming from not expected businesses, not expected areas, not expected regions, coming, listing, and then becoming very popular in their own sort of businesses in their own regions.
Okay, I'm going to take a very quick break on that note, but we will continue this very special conversation with the MD and CEO of BSE coming up in just a short bit. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You are with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow and continuing tonight this exclusive conversation with the MD and CEO of BSE. I want to talk about fundraising for women entrepreneurs. We hear very often from women entrepreneurs that it is just so much more difficult for them to raise funds. We were, for instance, the Leaders of Tomorrow. We traveled to 20 cities across the country, meeting with SMEs in every city that we're going to. We were in Lucknow recently, and one of the female panelists, who's an entrepreneur herself, said, when I approach banks, the rate of interest I'm charged is much higher. Another one said, when I'm approaching a VC, the questions I'm being asked are just so much more tougher than what a male counterpart and a male entrepreneur would be asked. What's your view on how perhaps things are going to change?
No, I think it's basically people have apprehensions, and some of them may be justified also. But eventually, the market. Basically, if you have good ideas, if you are able to execute well, you are able to also raise funds. And I think overall in BSE's SME platform, some women entrepreneurs have raised money and they have been doing fabulously well, from market research to even clothing lines. Sure. And that's why I think overall the markets don't ask where you come from. Markets don't ask which caste you are. Or markets don't ask what your gender is. If you perform, the markets will give you more money, more responsibilities. And if you don't, whatever your pedigree is, slowly it kind of goes away, because ultimately the performance is there for everyone to see every day. I
want to talk about innovation. That's something very close to your heart. The BSE today is the fastest exchange in the world. You undertake 6 responses per microsecond, 10 times faster than your nearest competitor. 1, why was that necessary and crucial? And 2, how you really brought that about?
See, basically what happens is in any business, you need to be on top of your game. And the top of your game business changes every day. Because today you may be the best in town and tomorrow somebody better comes and you need to catch up. And it happened to BSE. BSE was the number one exchange on trading volumes and other frameworks till 1994-95 in India. But later on, it lost the technology race. So when the new team joined around 2009, we decided what were the basic parameters on which people should measure an exchange, and which on basis of which people do measure exchanges. And one of them was the technological prowess, because the entire stock market framework has become very technology savvy, technology oriented. The only thing that the stock markets do is basically connect computers on a network, right? And that's where we said the speed is of essence. Whoever can allow faster speed at the lowest cost is supposed to be the best in the business of stock markets. And that's where we started working. And the response time we give is basically 6 microseconds in a way that when you place an order on BSE, within how much time you are able to get the response back from BSE that your order is accepted or rejected and what is the order number. That is done in 6 microseconds. In 1 second, there are 10 lakh microseconds. That is 1 million microseconds. So we give you response at 160,000th of a second. And this is pretty much one of the largest, most intensive IT framework in India with a designed response time.
I want to continue talking about technology, but in terms of businesses that are using technology, and I particularly want to talk about startups. There is the general perception that while India may have given rise to a lot of startups which are doing highly innovative work, several of whom have gone on to become unicorns when it comes to looking at their valuations, they're preferring to perhaps not list on the domestic exchanges, but to list on, say, the US exchanges, NASDAQ, etc. Do you think that's a correct perception? How do you think that's perhaps going to change? Do you think there's sort of an erosion of value for investors in India because this is happening?
It is basically a firm belief I have, is that India is going to create huge wealth using new technology over the next 50 years. And the world is going to create huge wealth. My hypothesis is that next 50 years, the world will create wealth that has not been created in the last 10,000 years. Effectively, the world, which is currently $360 trillion of wealth, will create another $360 trillion of wealth over the next 50 years. Indians, in a way, are probably the Indian investors, not the entrepreneurs. Today, India is pretty much amongst the top 2 most vibrant ecosystem for startups in the world. But most of the funding, almost 90-95% funding to these people is actually coming from abroad. So even if our companies, when they grow up, they will create tremendous wealth, but large part of that wealth will also go away because those people have actually taken bets on our entrepreneurs, and we have not done that. Probably we are a capital-starved country. That's why it has happened. Why wouldn't they list here vis-a-vis why would they list in other countries? There are many reasons. In fact, most of them, if they are funded abroad, they are structured also abroad. So effectively, if they have to list, they have to be structured in India for them to list. And Indian markets, that is true with even foreign markets, but foreign markets, especially US, is able to fund concept companies much better than an Indian market would do. Today, Indian markets basically look at companies which are only profit making, while as these companies, which are unicorns, may be actually burning a lot of money and may not become profitable for foreseeable future. And those are the kind of markets that are available, more developed in other countries, while as in India, it's not that well developed.
Though you are looking at, or you have plans and it's in the works, I understand, for a startup platform at the BSE, is there anything you can share on that?
BSE has a startup platform now. It's basically, the way we look at it is an SME platform itself. We have a certain minimum restriction that you need to have 3 years profitable track record, minimum issued capital of a particular size, whereas the startups may not even have that.
Yeah.
And that's where we have created a framework for startups. The small entrepreneur, the mom and pop or young, say 10 girls wanting to start up their own enterprises, probably may not get that funding from private equity or venture capital. And they can come to this platform and they are able to raise money. And that's where we think our job is to basically create a platform and ecosystem where if you need to raise 1 lakh rupees, we'll be able to get you. If you need to raise 1 lakh crore, we'll get you. So idea is that smallest entrepreneurs also should not go away from their dreams of being entrepreneurs because of lack of funds. There will be somebody who will be able to fund, and that's where we have also created an incubator at BSE. So BSE itself houses an incubator, and BSE has incubator in other cities like Varanasi, where young professionals who want to have jobs, who want to create their own companies, who have some products already in the market, some customers in the market, they can come, sit at BSE, get advice from the best chartered accountants, best company secretaries, best marketing experts, the best of what India has to offer. And we also take them to the customers abroad. And we basically use our CSR money along with a few other institutes of international repute from abroad. So this incubator takes care of very small companies, and then when they grow up, they can list in any of the startup exchanges across the country.
Fair enough. My last question to you is, speaking of your pet projects, technology and innovation are something that are integral to the work that you're doing here at the BSE, very close to your heart. Sustainability is another thing that I understand you're quite passionate about. And while the United Nations on its part has been encouraging more exchanges to become sustainable and go green, you've been leading that at the BSE.
It's important that we all understand that this is the only planet we have. Yeah. We can't run away from here, right? And we are all going to suffer immensely. And India is particularly vulnerable because of the fact that we are yet a developing nation. Today, many of our cities have some of the worst air pollution, and the companies which run the modern economy can do a lot in terms of contributing themselves to the lesser pollution, but also making people aware of how to go about ensuring that the planet we stay in is safer for every human. BSE and our regulator SEBI have been coming out with reporting frameworks for the companies, not only on financial side, but also on sustainability side. We also have indexes which measure the company's carbon emissions. Yeah. And so we have a Green X, we have a Carbon X, which actually provide those kind of indications of how the company is doing on a scale. Earlier, it was voluntary. Now slowly, some of these reportings are actually becoming compulsory, starting with the top 100 companies and so on and so forth. Okay. Slowly, it will come into all companies who have to report not only the financials, but also their sustainability practices and so on and so forth.
Sure. Thank you so much for your time here on the show tonight, Mr. Chauhan. We've run out of time on this very special interview, but we love hearing from you, the viewer. As always, do get in touch on email. leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com is our email ID. On social media, tweet at me personally, Sunanda_J, or our official Twitter handle, LOT_ET Now. On Facebook, we're at Leaders of Tomorrow on ET Now. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.